When I was looking at that game, like if you have any, let's say you're playing Madden all these years, you have that one cousin that you play that blitzes every play, all out blitz. There's a cure for that.
Mhm.
There's a cure for that. And you have the tight ends. So what do you do in that situation? What is a man killer with full blitzes? You either run a quick mesh concept or you run slants on the inside.
Yep.
Or you throw a dump right to the tight end over top of the linebacker that just blitzes. So when I was looking at this game, that was what was so frustrating was because the line, even though it had been jumbled around with injury and everything, they were not making any adjustments. And this goes back years now with Clemson that we are going to play the Clemson offense and we're going to die on this hill. And that the Clemson offense, if we execute it, we're going to win. Clemson just beats Clemson. Then why does the NFL teams make adjustments? Why do better teams make adjustments at halftime? The reason for all this is that like you have to there are good players on other teams and there are good coaches. So sometimes you have to scheme your plays and your playmakers open. And that's what I've been so frustrated with this Clemson team is that they have playmakers. Like you said in the first half, they were able to attack over the middle of the field. They were attacking at the probably the quadrant zone of 15 yards on the field and beyond in the middle part of the field. That's where they were hitting and getting a majority of the yards. If you notice in most of the games throughout the season, that when Clemson has attacked that quadrant, or well, I guess that third of the field, 15 yards and beyond, is when they were blowing teams out.
Yep.
And that's when a lot of things were happening. So it's not the wide receivers, and I don't necessarily believe it's the quarterback. It's two things. It's not making adjustments when you should to get your playmakers the ball. And that's one thing that's so strange about Dabo Sweeney is he got his job, got to keep his job, and became the coach at Clemson by getting his playmakers the ball, and that being C.J. Spiller and Jacoby Ford back in the day. Now, right now, we're seeing the a frustrating moment, I guess, in time where it's like, well, this has worked for me in the past. I'm just not going to let go of what's got me there. And I think it's time to make some adjustments based upon if a team makes adjustments and you've only thrown the ball for 14 yards in the second half, you can't run the ball for the second reason I was going to bring up is that, A, when everyone's blitzing everybody, there's another two things that you cannot do. Whether you're playing a video game or if you're a coach at any level. If they're blitzing, all out blitzing, sending, eight guys, seven, eight guys all the time, you cannot run RPO and play action. You will get in your head knocked off every time. And that's what happened with Maffa. Two times in the second quarter, you saw him get drilled right when the ball's handed off to him. They're sending more people, and they never made the adjustment. So I'm glad that, like I said, I'm glad that we got the win. But there's got to be a change in knowing that you actually have to scheme for opponents, which I do believe they do to a certain extent. But I don't think that the in-game adjustments happening from halftime, a timeout to the third quarter, I just don't think it's there. And I think that's what's killing this team.
No, I agree. There's just so much about how this team goes about. Um, when they get looks from the defense, like they did a great job in the first. I thought they had a really good plan. They knew that Pitt was going to be really hyper aggressive. I mean that it's a Pat Narduzzi defense. Like that's he's been like that since he's been at Pitt. That's they showed the graphic. Clemson and Pitt and Clemson are lead the country in tackles for loss and sacks the last 5 years. That has always been their identity. And they just did not do a whole lot to you know adjust to the adjustments. And now we're and this has been it's not just this week, obviously, like you mentioned, like this has been a consistent problem under multiple coordinators. um and so it makes you wonder like why there is this kind of disconnect when you have, especially this year when you have the playmakers, you are in a much better shape from a skill talent standpoint than you've been the past couple of years. And quarterback, I mean, if you don't have K Klubnik, you don't win this game.
Yep.
And so like you have the guy, and obviously Phil Maffa is an outstanding running back, and you basically allowed them to not only dedicate all their resources to taking him out of the game, but also being able to stop your passing game. Like that should not happen. When a team is that, it is that aggressive and that dedicated to stopping your run game, that should be it should be easy. Like it's okay. Well, I've got a bunch of things for this. The things you mentioned. I mean, the quick game was working in that first quarter because you were not only were you attacking the middle of the field and spreading the ball around, um, they you were hitting spots where they were vacating. That's easy fundamental football. That's stuff you do in Pop Warner High School. At any level.
Well, you'll
Um,
notice that better coached teams, like if you're watching the NFL, or if you're watching, hate to say it, like I hate saying this about my own team or whatever, but if you see like Alabama, Georgia, or any other, or Ole Miss or Texas, they'll move the line and move the pocket if they're getting it overloaded on one side, and then they'll even have like the tight end rub block and then
yep.
release, be right open. They use their tight ends a little bit better. Our tight end is basically being used as a big, tall wide receiver. And if that's the case and the team's doing that, I say get another one in the game to help chip block, take on one more of those guys, and then be able to release and be wide open in the flat as the last check down. But like McElroy said earlier in the game, you know, why are you limiting yourself when there's that much rush? And that has to be coached to where he's looking for one thing instead of reading through progressions, because your first progression's got to be your best player. I mean, like he's the red line on a video game. That's Antonio Williams. You find that guy, or not, or number one, you got to find Moore or Wesco, and to me, those two would be like 1A, 2A, and B in that situation. And the another thing that's alarming to me, you have no offense happening on the field, and you look at on the field, and the personnel decisions are mind blowing. When do you ever see? When do you ever see Antonio Williams, Wesco, and Moore on the field at the same time? You got your best three receivers basically. Like I don't know. It's like they get these weird personnel groupings, like just like the game's on the line. The game's on the line, and this was on defense. You take out your whole starting defensive line that's been killing them,
Yep.
and give them a chance to go down the field. These guys are like 18 to 22. They can last for 4 or 5 more plays just to seal the deal. I mean, we don't need to walk in some third, fourth string walk ons in different spots because we have a couple injuries. You got to go win the game. I know that I'm older, and I played college football in the late, well, early 2000s, mostly, really 2001 to 2005. But I mean, back then we had guys that, like, actually I saw one of them on the field that was ushering Klubnik around after the
Oh
game. He
yeah.
looks like Santa Claus. That's my
Yeah.
friend. That's my friend Jason LeMay.
Oh,
He,
okay.
he played at Clemson. He played at Clemson also, and what I was realizing is that, like, to the main point is why are we not playing our best players in the most important moments of a game as well? That's another thing that is kind of nerve wracking, and I think it goes back I think it goes back a long time. And this is kind of maybe a tangent, but I'll keep it very short. Just as one of your thoughts. Do you think that some issues potentially with the development of players could have been when we were blowing everyone out by a whole lot, that we skipped directly over the scholarship players that needed the reps after our stars when we had Etienne, Trevor Lawrence, and these guys, and we had our star wide receivers, we'd get up by 30 points. We'd let them go in for a series and they do okay, but they never got any time with the number one quarterback at wide receiver or on defense, whatever. We would skip straight from there and we went to like the Hamp Greens and those guys and just like we never developed them. And I think that a lot of what we're seeing at Clemson now is the backlash of not developing those players because we skipped them because we didn't want to blow people out too badly. And that right there is also biting us in the ass right now in the rankings because when we had the chance to embarrass some people and beat them as bad as we should have, because I knew that the committee was not going to respect the ACC, right here we are sitting at 20. You know, that's not a good position. But I just think that a lot of the scholarship guys over the walk-ons, you got to develop them, even if you're beating teams badly. You got to develop your players other than practice, and I think that has carried over, and I think it led to transfers in the wide receiver room. I think that that's a lot of what happened. I don't fault Dabo Swinney for being a good man, ever, ever, ever. But there's a responsibility to develop your talent and to put the best team you can on the field, especially for that price. He's got a thick wallet. Thanks
Yeah,
to Clemson and all the fans.
I'm with you. I think you know what, TBC. I'm gonna let you take this one. I'm gonna let you respond because I know you had some thoughts on that.
Yeah. So I agree with you to a point, but um, yeah, I mean, I do agree. Look, I am not one that really cares much about blowing people out. I think when you bring your second team, your third string team in, I think you should operate like it is the first team offense or the first team defense. That's my philosophy. It's not our job to try to not score. It's your job to stop us. We're obviously not going to be trotting out first team offense, first team defense when we're up by 28 points in the fourth quarter, right? But I do agree that you have to get your second string and your third stringers in there, and you got to get those guys reps. And overall, just I think Clemson does a very good job of that. I do see your point where they do give the walk-ons and the guys that do the scout team and stuff work, particularly at the end of games when we're blowing people out.
But not a whole
Um,
quarter. You don't give them a whole quarter.
I
You give,
understand.
you give them a
And there's
drive at the end of the game.
there probably is some of that. And I know they do that as kind of a motivation piece to keep
Right.
those guys motivated and stuff like that. And I think that's important. But there's certainly a balance there, right? Where you got to get the guys that really need the work in, and then you're rewarding the guys that truly do put in a lot of work during the week and make your first and second string teams better because they're simulating plays, right? So I think there's a balance you can strike there. I see some of the points you bring, but I do think overall Clemson does a pretty good job of developing those younger guys. We saw it a lot this year. Me and Jordan talked about it on a few streams. I think particularly I can think about the North Carolina State game where we rolled out that second, third string defense, and it was hard to watch at times. Those guys were giving up a ton of points, but we needed them because you look at a day like today, and unfortunately, your anchor in that secondary is gone. RJ Mickens, you look up and that guy's gone, and that was felt today. I don't know if people realize that. And then you open the game. Wade Woodaz is gone. Sammy Brown gets ejected for targeting. Now you got D Creighton, right, because of injuries earlier in the season as well. So it's important to get those guys work. It's important to develop your second and third string because, as we saw along the offensive line as well, suddenly we're depending on those guys for
But
an
I think that
entire
those
game.
guys are scholarship players. The guys you're talking about are scholarship players that are going to help you out in
Yeah,
hopefully not this year, but later on the line.
right.
In some games, I felt that they were putting guys on the field that were never going to play. They were never going to play other than those situations way too early. And I think that that's why you say like EJ Williams never fully got developed and whatnot, because he was kind of getting He wasn't going to start over who was there. He got a couple of series here and there. He'd go and he'd get a series or two, but Clemson was up so much, Dad would put other people in. I think that happened a lot on the levels. What you're saying, I completely agree with,
Yeah,
because you need that depth to fill you out for the rest of, that's your fruition, or what you have in situations like today for sure.
yeah,
Um, but sometimes I think the guys that you're talking about getting experience is the ones I'm saying to leave in. Don't skip past them until
yeah,
they get their development time.
yeah. I got you. I understand what you're saying.
Yeah.
Well, and I think you both are making good. I think it's just the thing is it's not uniform across every position, and I think that's kind of one thing that was pretty evident, is that you have some. I mean, obviously you're not going to have the same level of depth everywhere. I need to turn my light on. My lighting got really really crazy. I hate that it gets dark at 5 o'clock now. But I'll finish my point and then fix it, because I know I probably look like uh, I'm staring at the pearly gates right now. But like it's not uniform across every position, and I think that's one of the things that's kind of frustrating, is that when you look at a position like let's linebacker per se, as talented as Sammy Brown is, I mean, why is he the next guy up already, when you have guys like, I mean, obviously Kobe McLeod is out for the year, and he was definitely one of he was basically the first guy off the bench. So that hurts. But why is why is D Creighton hardly getting snaps until he's thrust into a situation like this? And I thought he had his moments, but of course he gave up a touchdown, tough matchup against one of the better tight ends in the ACC.
But he was
Um,
competitive, though. He was
yeah,
competitive.
he was competitive. I thought he
Yeah.
didn't get. I was very worried because we had not seen much out of him to this point this year. But why is D Creighton hardly playing? Why is Jamal Anderson? These are guys that are second year players that don't seem to be really, as the season is progressing, don't seem to be gaining any more trust and snaps in these games. And I'm very it's very different than what we've seen along the defensive line, for example, or uh, uh, really the defensive line, defensive back. You definitely see more rotation there. I mean, you saw Ronan Hannafin play a good bit of snaps today. That was pretty shocking. But he almost had
Didn't
a
he
pick.
come he was a wide receiver, wasn't he?
Yeah, he came in as a wide
He was
receiver he was in that he was with Noble Johnson,
crazy.
um,
Yeah,
and
that
they
was that was a really bad, man. That's kind of a bust class at wide receiver.
yeah, I mean, so far and I will Ronan Hannafin, at least he played both sides in high school, so I thought the take was it worked out, but I think he's definitely improving. He did not look lost out there, like he did earlier in the season when he got in there, and
Yeah,
he was playing, like he plays hard. That's one thing I love about him, is he's flying around the field at like Mach 5 every single snap. Sometimes he doesn't know where he's going, but today he seemed to be in a lot more comfortable. Um, but yeah, but my point is you're not seeing that consistency across every position as far as getting those guys reps, because with the linebacker example, it's like, man, Jamal Anderson is one of the best athletes on the team, but he can't see the field. Like, why does he not understand? Like, why is he not why doesn't he have that trust from the coaching staff? So either he's good enough to play and we're doing like coaching malpractice, or he has not been developed. He hasn't taken the steps in his development that he should have by now. And so like that's kind of my thing, is like you don't see it uniform across every position, and in games like this they showed. So
And that's a critical position. And I'll say these two things and get off you guys' show, because it's your show. But about the linebackers, especially when you're looking at the linebackers, like you said, Anderson is an incredible athlete. They've got a lot of speed in all those positions, but the way that by definition, Sammy Brown, if you don't put him on the field as a coach, him being a 5-star, that's the reality of the nature. You got to be the dude as a top 15 pick or recruit, you've got to be that guy. That's the pressure about being a 5 star. You should be able to step in and make plays almost everywhere you go. Now, uh, you're right 100% about why Anderson isn't on the field or hasn't been there as much. But the another thing about that is that you're seeing that at cornerback as well. I'm not as good with names, but number 23, what is his name? He is very good.
Ashton
Well,
Hampton.
Ashton Hampton.
I, he's very good. His length, he almost picked
Oh
off 2 balls at his body length.
yeah,
Was about to make the play, but it's that whole thing is about there is a lot of speed and talent there.
yeah. Mm.
And that's what absolutely killed Clemson in the Georgia game is because A, Sammy Brown just got there, and B, they had the linebackers in a missed position. You got Woodass, who is he can fly up the field fast, but his agility side to side is far less than Barrett Carter's.
Yep.
So what did Georgia do? They beat you on the edge because Clemson couldn't set an edge with the linebacker, so they were running around them because they couldn't keep up with the speed. And now that Sammy Brown, they put him in that position, like they did last week. He's able to set that edge with speed, and Carter can fill in those other gaps, and Woodass can lay the wood like what he's supposed to. Uh, and I think it's just a weird way that they had it initially going, but at the same time, the players that you're saying that could be developed or should have been developed in NC State game, Appalachian State game, and in those games, you have to get your Sammy Brown, but you got to get those guys in there too, a little bit because they're scholarship players and they got a load of talent. But we got a guy that was putting on another jersey to put on another jersey to put on another jersey to go out there and make a play that didn't even have a name on the back of his shirt. But you know what? He made a play at least, and that was amazing that he made that play. So he'll have that memory the rest of his life. But I don't know how far that goes if he's going to help us if there's an injury down the line.